The iconic World Trade Center has been featured in popular culture for nearly 3 decades. Yeah, not even 30 years. These towers were so iconic and apparently still are, since you guys are so interested in this topic on my channel. I will always marvel their height of popularity towers reached around the world by symbolizing America's economic power through films, music videos, television, cartoons, and video games. Towers were completed in early 70s, around the same time first generation of gaming console was born. 2 ways to make it clear back then that the game is set in Manhattan would be either to show Statue of Liberty or Twin Towers in the background. Here we'll come across some titles that even strangely kind of predicted 9/11. Rewinding to 1984, remember those cool looking boxes known as arcade cabinets? COBRA Command is known as one of the first games to feature Twin Towers in the background. Throughout the whole gameplay, player assumes the role as a pilot of helicopter and must save the free world such as New York City streets from terrorists. Terrorist attack. Doesn't that sound familiar? Considering the game is 37 years old, the graphics actually looks pretty good, and that's because it's a hybrid of interactive movie and shooter game if you look closely. Also was a Laserdisc based game, and Laserdisc was another analog format used to watch movies but in much higher quality than on VHS tapes. Manhunter New York doesn't seem to look good as on the cover art. How can possibly a game released 4 years later look worse than COBRA Command? Apparently Manhunter was a computer game, and first computer from 1980s weren't capable of outputting graphics like in arcade games. Just a random fact that in the 80s computers were sold for $3,000. No thanks, I know I would rather spend my money on arcade games. Anyways, opening of the game shows New York skyline in 2002 with towers still standing, as obviously no one could ever imagine those 110-story buildings being destroyed one day. Too Crude shows the towers in post-apocalyptic world in control of a criminal gang. Basically, through the 1990s, as the graphics improved, so did the look of the towers. Video games started moving from 16-bit 4th generation to 32-bit 5th generation of gaming console. Throughout the years, most noticeably in the late 90s, films and video games about disasters became very popular, and in most cases choose New York City as a main target of asteroids, tsunamis, and planes. In Trade Center Defender, released on September 12, 2001, players had to shoot down planes that were heading towards the towers. Another reason we have conspiracy theories. Obviously the game was removed from the sale, but was later remade and titled New York Defender.
Interrogate the leader. We don't yet know why the terrorists would
Towers
risk an
are
open assault.
absent in video game called Deus Ex, even though it came out in 2000. However, the storyline is set in cyberpunk-themed dystopian world in the year 2052, and game developers stated that towers had been destroyed by terrorists, but in video game storyline, not in real life at the time. Developers said that we just said that the towers had been destroyed too, and this was way before 9/11 years. Check this out. Real-time strategy war game called Red Alert 2. It depicted a plane appearing to head towards the World Trade Center towers with a large explosion engulfing the building in a scene remarkably similar to the terror attack. Was this coincidence or a planned attack? Well, one thing's sure, that creators of Grand Theft Auto saga had their offices a few blocks away from World Trade Center and were close spectators of the events. Not that they did not include Twin Towers Grand Theft Auto 3, they also modified the route of flying planes so that it did not look like it was passing near the largest buildings in Liberty City. The famous Dodo plane is included but is not drivable. Microsoft Flight Simulator is the longest running product from Microsoft. The series began in 1982. With the release of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2002, Microsoft was at the center of controversy because of rumors that terrorists used their product to prepare for the attacks. Players who tried to recreate the attack were banned from international online flying network.
John, you just about crashed into the Empire State Building.
Hey, that would be cool.
Events of September 11 resulted in removal of Twin Towers from the whole entertainment, not just video games. Some films were even cancelled, like True Lies 2, as James Cameron said that terrorism is no longer something to be taken lightly. Sequel to Forrest Gump was cancelled as its story was no longer relevant. All true towers were gone. Changes in some video games were totally unnecessary, like in Spider-Man 2 Enter Electro. In the final battle against Electro, Spider-Man finds Electro by saying, "Where would you go to be on the top of the world?"
Where would you go to be on top of the world? I'm coming, Electro.
This line with the shot of towers were removed in later version. Immediately after the attacks, people would connect image of towers with nothing than traumatizing memories. Due to attacks, towers are now perceived mostly in negative context. Optimism from Forrest Gump is long gone and it's a whole new era outside.